Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button and I hope you all enjoy the video. So yes, I'm here to talk about cancel culture and social media, or how cancel culture really takes shape within social media. So this is something that I like to talk about, only because I think, the way people have sort of understood it over time has been really interesting. And I wrote about this on my blog, which I'll link down below. I also wrote about it sort of along the lines when the whole Chandler Moore situation happened with his wedding and all those pictures, but I'll link those down below. So today I'm here to basically talk about cancel culture and social media as a whole. So I figured that the starting place for that for me would be to talk about how I've always understood cancel culture and what it's meant. Now, my understanding of cancel culture has always been something that has been applied to celebrities and hyper visible people who, have said and done things that the general society, based on the moral rules that we live by, if we will, have just deemed to be unacceptable. And because of that, the general consensus is just that, these are people that we're not going to be supporting anymore. And the things that they would have said and done, that are unacceptable are things that kind of make sense to me, right? Is when we talk about, them have done or said things that are abusive, discriminatory or harmful, towards a group of people on the basis of their religion, their sexuality, their gender, whatever it may be. So that's how I've always understood cancel culture. So it's essentially saying that, these are people who've been harmful in these ways, and because of that, the general consensus is that, we're just not going to support these people anymore. And yeah, that's something that kind of makes sense to me. So then with that in mind, when I think about cancel culture, I think about people like Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, R. Kelly, Jeff Epstein, and the list is endless, where people who have done things that society and even the law is just absolutely not. So that's always just been my understanding of cancel culture. Now, over time, it's been something that outside of celebrities started to be applied to people who are micro and macro influencers, where what people would start to do is that they would find tweets and videos and pictures or whatever it is that these people had taken, and then put them on the platform to be like, hey guys, look at what this person has done, I think that they should be cancelled. So then the question becomes, when canceling someone, what does that actually entail? What does that actually mean? Now, when I think about it, for the most part, when it comes to canceling people, it really is about impacting two things about whoever the person is that's going to be cancelled: their money and their social capital. So their money, it's by saying that, we're not going to watch your movies, we're not going to listen to your songs, buy your books, buy your clothes, we're not interested in any of that. And social capital, because in the age of social media, social capital is actually worth quite a bit, and with social capital, it's also taking it to the point of saying that, we want this person to be deplatformed. We no longer want them to be able to have the social capital that they once had. So it really is always those two things. Now, the thing about cancel culture is that even though there is a consensus around it when it comes to a certain individual, the truth about it though is that cancel culture is still an individual decision. Now, here's the thing. Even though there can be a consensus at times to say, as a collective, this person is going to be cancelled, the truth of the matter is that it still is an individual decision, right? And I know that sometimes it can feel like, people are putting a gun to your head to say you need to cancel this person too, but that's just not how it works. There are plenty of people who have been deemed to be cancelled who still have people who support them and, are still fans of them, and they haven't changed their minds regarding that individual. At the end of the day, people are informed by their own morality, their own religious beliefs, political ideals, personal experiences, all of those things, and that informs the decisions that they make in their lives, including whether or not they're going to cancel someone. And sometimes you're going to find people who align with you and be like, yep, I agree that we're going to cancel that person. Sometimes you're going to find people who don't agree with you, but that's what I mean when I say that even though it ends up being a collective, it still is an individual decision about whether or not you're going to cancel someone or if you're going to support them. So the truth of the matter is that no one is really forcing anyone to do anything. Now, the truth is that if you decide that you're going to support someone someone who the collective has deemed to be cancelled, like at most people are just going to look at you funny and they're going to attribute that to mean something about your character. Because let's just be honest, in this day and age, with everything that we knew then, but especially what we know now about someone like R. Kelly, if you're going to continue to support him, that says a lot about you. So I know for the people who are anti-cancel culture, you know, one of the main things is that, you know, cancel culture, it ruins people's lives. It's this terrible thing that just ruins people's lives. And anytime I hear people say that, I'm always like, I don't know if I agree for that to be true, right? Because when I think about celebrities and influencers who've been labeled as cancelled, how many of their lives have actually been ruined? And by that I mean, like, these are people who still continue to work, they still continue to make money, you know, they still get booked, they still have fans, and they still have supporters. So I'm like, how have their lives been ruined? I mean, they still continue to have their platforms, you know, and that's why I'm like, I'm struggling to really agree with that. When someone is cancelled, it ruins their lives. Maybe someone like Daniel Caesar, but let's just be honest, he played himself. Because like, how are you going to be loud and wrong, have people tell you that you're loud and wrong, decide that you're gonna double down, and then challenge them to cancel you? Like, it blows my mind. And the funniest thing is that the kid said, okay, the kid said fine, and they obliged. But that's the thing sometimes, is that for so many people, it really isn't just a one and done type of situation, because they'll do things and people will be like, hey, let's explain to you why you're wrong. Let's explain to you why, you know, you don't really have a great perspective on that. And more often than not, the people just consistently double down and stand firm by the fact that they don't think that they're wrong. That's why people will be like, okay, then fine, then we don't want anything to do with you. And so outside of the celebrities, you know, who have to face legal consequences because they were committing actual crime, for the most part, you know, people just catch heat for a little bit and then they go away, and then they'll just come back with a new movie, a new comedy special, a new Netflix special, you know, and they'll write a book, and they just kind of keep it pushing, right? So then the question becomes, what happens then when it's not a celebrity or an influencer or a hyper visible person who on social media, you know, gets cancelled? What happens when it's just a regular person? A regular person, you know, you just go on Twitter and you decide that you're gonna say something wild and problematic. I mean, off bad people will come for you. They'll call you everything but a child of God, you know, and they'll tell you all the ways in which you're wrong. You know, you'll catch heat, your mentions will be a mess. And if it's something really truly egregious, the most that's gonna get done is that, you know, emails will be sent to your employer. And most of what will happen is that that person might just delete the tweet, you know, they'll lock their account, they'll delete the Twitter account as a whole, and then just come back rebranded as someone completely different. Sometimes they may even face consequences from their employers, especially if it's something that's big enough and it gains enough traction. Because here's the thing though about businesses, is that no matter what it is that they like to tell people, is that the first thing that they will always protect is their brand and whatever good standing that they have with the public. And if an employee of theirs is doing something that brings their brand into question, they will have no problem protecting their brand. Now, of course, some people make the argument that, you know, it's a little bit extreme going after, you know, someone's job and, you know, letting their employers know whatever. And some people are just like, no, it's not. You just get what you get. Now, the other thing that I've seen happen, especially for people who are anti-cancel culture, is that they make it seem like it's this most ridiculous petty thing, right? They make it seem like, oh, people will just cancel you even if you just disagree with them, you know, they'll just cancel you for whatever. And I'm like, that's simply not true, you know, because let's just be honest, no one is gonna cancel you if you say that you don't like Beyonce's music. Like, that's not gonna happen. Yeah, and most people might just be irritated with you, they'll fill your comments with beehive, you know, emojis, but that's about it. You know, people aren't getting cancelled for trivial things, you know, and it's annoying that people have kind of reduced, you know, I guess what cancel culture is to that, which is simply isn't true. All the people who've been labeled as cancelled, if you will, are people who have done and said some really, really harmful things. It honestly is never just for nothing. And I think people then tend to overreact and say things like, oh, nowadays you can't say anything without getting cancelled. And when people say that, what I hear is them saying that they want to be able to say whatever without facing any kind of consequence, say whatever about you know, a people group without facing any kind of consequence. And I'm like, that simply is not how it works. And I'm glad that that's not how it works, because for far too long people have said and done things without any kind of consequence. Now, the truth of the matter is that we know that the thoughts and the views and the attitudes that people hold don't just remain that, they inform how this person will move in the world, and how they will be in the world and how they will interact with people. So that's why I think it is important to call people out when they do have these harmful thoughts and views, because more often than not, it can translate into them being harmful and hurtful in real everyday lives, right? Because the truth is, the violence and the hate that we see in the world doesn't exist in a vacuum. It all starts as thoughts and opinions that people hold, and then they move in the world in that way. So that's why it's important for those things to always be challenged and for people to always be called out on that, because it doesn't just remain a thought or an opinion that someone has. So for me, that's one of the things that I do appreciate about social media, is that it is a good place and a good starting place, at least when talking about calling out issues, and calling out people and the harmful things that they say. I think it is a good starting place. But in terms of what actually causes a person to change, I don't think social media is that space. Because the truth is, if we think that having multiple people yelling at a person because of a thing that they've tweeted or a thing that they've said or a video that they've made is going to cause them to change, is simply not true. And the reason why I say that is that because social media is not your actual community. It's not the people that you do life with and the people that are around you. It simply isn't. Now, like I said before, it's great for highlighting these issues, but I think the deeper work that, leads a person to, changing their views and their perspective on things, I think that work happens off of social media within the community and the people that you are a part of. And I think people expect a lot from social media if they think that that's the thing that will get a person to change. I think, the expectation of social media is really, really a lot, and I think our understanding of it, has sort of evolved to the point where it is now, where it's just tripping people up, and it's like I was saying earlier, is that people don't engage in good faith on social media, because I've gotten to the point, honestly, where I believe that a lot of the things that people do on social media, they do it on purpose. They do it on purpose because they know it's gonna aggravate people, and they just want to get people riled up. It's not because they don't know that what they're doing or what they're saying is harmful, but they do it because they're like, it's gonna get a reaction. And I think there are people who do that on purpose. I mean, that's why rage marketing is a thing, right? Where these brands and these companies do these things. They absolutely know, but they do it because they know it's gonna invoke a reaction out of people. And that's why I'm like, it's difficult for people to engage in good faith, because so many people just do things on purpose just to trigger people. So when moving from the social media space and people being cancelled there, the question should really become, what happens then to that person, that individual, when they go and they become part of their community? Like, how can them being called out or whatever on social media translate into the community that they are a part of? So I think that we're more likely to give grace to someone that we know or someone that we're doing life with. We're more likely to give that person grace versus an internet stranger or celebrity. Within your community and the people that you do life with, that's where you have the space and the opportunity to learn, to critically think about things, to unlearn certain things, because the people that you're in community with, more than the fact that they know you, is because they're invested in you, and they believe in your capacity to change, and they create that environment and that space and that container, after you've been challenged and you've been called out, to say, we believe in your capacity to change and we're going to create the space for you. Social media doesn't do that. And a big part of why it doesn't do that is because it's not your community. It really isn't. Now, here's the thing that I want to say, right? When I say we're more likely to give grace, I'm not saying that that means that you just look the other way because it's a person that you know. What I'm saying is that when you've done all the things that you're supposed to, calling that person out, challenging them, letting know that they're wrong and why they're wrong, when you've done all of that, creating that space to say, okay, I believe in your capacity to change. Because I think the problem that sometimes happens, especially with the communities that people are part of, because let's be real, some communities are not rooted in accountability. And for a lot of people, you know, when it's suddenly someone that they know or it's a friend, you know, they just look the other way. And that's not what I mean at all. Because the thing to remember is that your values cannot change based on who the person is. Your values are your values are your values. And if you're going to say that they'll be different because it's a friend, that's where the hypocrisy comes in, right? For people who will spend time talking about gender-based violence, but they're able to maintain friendships with abusers to the extent of not even calling them out or challenging them, just looking the other way. That's not it at all. And that's the thing, is like, some people really do need to evaluate the communities that they're a part of. Because I'm talking about real communities, the people that you do life with, where it's really rooted in accountability and ultimately saying we always want to be better people, and knowing that you can say things to the people that you do life with and challenge them, you know, and not be afraid that, ish, I don't want to step on any toes, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Not that at all. And that's the thing, is that people get to a point where they compartmentalize their values. Now all of a sudden, because it's your friend, your values now just become theory, and they're not things that you put into practice. And I think it is unfortunate, especially within those communities, because to me all that says is that you're saying that you don't believe in that person's ability to change, right? Because you're saying that, look, I'm not going to call them out, I'm not going to discuss this, whatever, I'm just not going to bring it up. Because it's like, in a way, you're kind of giving up on them, because you're not even giving them the opportunity to say, hey, this is where you're wrong, whatever, 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 and actually believing that they have the capacity to change. I think the most important thing in all of this, though, is to remember that the people that you're in community with, when they call you out and they challenge you on these things, I honestly believe is that they're doing that because they care. You know, when you get called out and you get challenged on these things, it's not a punishment. If anything, it's the opportunity for redemption. Because that's the thing also, right? Even when I think about, you know, how cancel culture plays itself out online, it's the same with someone that you're doing life with, right? If it gets to a point where you know that they've done something or they're doing something and you call them out on it and they just want to double down and they want to do all of those things, it makes sense then why people are just like, I'm just going to have to cut this person off because I can't do it. And sometimes it really will be like major egregious things where someone is like, this completely goes against my value systems, I don't know how I can maintain being in community with you. And I think that that's also fair. And all of that is to say that, you know, you're not just saying because it's a person that I know I can look the other way, which is something that happens quite often, where people have all of the things to say on public platforms about this and that and this and that, but when it's people that they know, suddenly it's just theory and they look the other way, and it's things like, oh, but it's complicated and, you know, it's a gray area, whatever, whatever. The truth is, we create gray areas when we accept certain things, you know, and we don't demand accountability, we don't demand growth and all of those things from the people around us. We are the ones who create those gray areas. So I think even within our communities, it's not a thing of we just look the other way. The same way that, you know, people do the most on social media, I think we have the responsibility within our communities, when we see people do things, to call them out on it, you know, and not just be like, I'm just going to look the other way, and then create the space to say, I believe in your capacity to change. Now let's work on these things. So the last thing that I want to talk about is accountability, especially within the social media space. It's such an interesting thing, you know, and I think it really doesn't work, because for a lot of people on the internet, you know, when people start talking about accountability, for people it's like, well, who are you, internet stranger, to tell me that you demand accountability from me? Like, who are you? You don't know anything about me. And I think that's why when it comes to accountability on social media, most people are just not with it. And I think part of that is because a lot of it can start to become very performative, where people are like, fine, I'm in trouble now, so I know, okay, if I hit these points, then I'll be fine. If I go on this talk show, I take a picture with this person, you know, I join this charity initiative or whatever, I'll be fine. The person might not even believe or agree that they've done something wrong, but they're like, I guess we've got to be accountable because of the optics, and it's just what people demand. So that's why I think, you know, demanding accountability on social media can get very, very weird very quickly, where people are just like, I'm just not gonna. But generally though, when I think about accountability, I always believe that the people who have been harmed it's up to them to say what accountability needs to look like, right? It's part of the reasons why you can't accept an apology on behalf of someone else, because if the hurt and the offense was not targeted to you, you can't say, you know, that the apology is enough. You can't say whatever the person is doing is enough because it wasn't targeted at you in the first place. I also think generally with accountability, it's important that we remember that accountability and forgiveness don't always work hand in hand, right? A person can decide that they're not going to forgive you, but that doesn't mean it absolves you of taking responsibility for what you've done and learning and growing and being a better person, because it's not just for their benefit or for your benefit, but it's for benefit of society as a whole. Because I mean, that's really how you work on changing the society, right? When as an individual, when you're part of a community that holds you accountable, when you're part of a community that lets you know why and how you are wrong, and then challenges you to learn and to do and to become better, because those communities, we then are all a part of society, and that's how we change it, and that's how things just get better. You know, by constantly calling each other out and by challenging each other and believing that we have the capacity and the ability to ultimately be better people. Because for as long as when it's people that we know and people in community with, we look away, but when it's celebrities and influencers, we have all the things to say, it doesn't really service us in terms of the communities that we're a part of in a real way, and not just social media spaces. But the truth is, I mean, people really don't care. People don't care. I mean, honestly, people are not bothered about cancel culture and why people are being cancelled or why people are being called out. You know, people don't care. People are pretty happy holding on to, you know, their harmful views and opinions and attitudes and all of those things. They simply don't care, you know, because also the communities and the people that they're a part of are also holding the same views. So no one is really calling anyone to order or challenging anyone, to be quite honest. And as far as social media is concerned, all people want to do is get back to the good old days, you know, where they could say whatever it is that they wanted to say with no consequence whatsoever. And the thing is, those people who want to get back to the good old days and keep saying whatever, is that more often than not, they were never part of the groups where the hate and the violence was being targeted towards. And it's why so many of them will still be like, well, I don't get what the big deal is. Why can't I say that? Or, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's just my take on cancel culture and social media as a whole. You know, I think social media is good for a lot of things when it comes to this. You know, highlighting issues, calling people out, challenging people. I think it's good for that. But I also believe that where people can change is not on social media, but it is in communities that they are with, where people are true and honest and want the best for that person and believe that that person can change, and the person is willing to also change and learn and unlearn and think critically about things. But yeah, so anyway guys, that is it. I hope you enjoyed this video, but let me know in the comments below what you think. What's your take on cancel culture and social media, and you know, people's ability to change, and how, you know, in the communities that we're part of, how we can show up for each other in a way that is better, I think, than what we've been doing now, and not in a way that just enables and keeps, you know, the bad behavior and the bad attitudes and the bad actions going. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.